Hello there everybody, it is me FreezerBunny and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. So today we're back in Strangerville and this time we're building this Victorian mansion called the Crimson Victorian. Now this build was actually inspired by some pre-existing blueprints I found online. Also this build was inspired by the Victorian style build mode items that came with Strangerville as well. I knew the moment I saw those I had to build myself a Victorian mansion, so here we go. This mansion was actually built around this elaborate grand staircase area. There are a couple of tutorials available online that detail how to build this and make it a fully functional staircase. In particular, I based this technique off of a tutorial made by Kate Emerald, so I will put her link down in the description below for those of you guys who want to have a detailed explanation, because it's a little bit complicated to explain in a sped up video. So if you guys want a more in-depth tutorial, please feel free to check out her video so you guys can also create your elaborate staircases as well. So believe it or not, this build was actually a very complicated one to build. It took me over 14 hours in total to build this mansion. So aside from the incredibly detailed exterior, this build also has a very elaborate interior as well. This build had a total of 17 rooms that I had to furnish individually, including 4 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms. So yeah, this build was made for a relatively medium-sized family, I guess. I was gonna say large, but really it was made for a family with maybe 3 kids. And then there's also a guest room as well. One thing that I haven't done before in this build was actually build a nursery, so I'm really excited about that because I haven't done one before, so I'm really excited to show that off to you guys later on. But the family I built this for was kind of like inspired by Victorian families, because during the Victorian period it was fashionable to have larger families, which was mainly a result of Queen Victoria apparently, who had many children, many of which ended up being royalty from other parts of Europe. I think Queen Victoria is considered the grandmother of Europe because literally all of the royal families have descended from her or like are related to her in some way. But anyway, this build, my good friend Harrie pointed out that many of the items that came with Strangerville, specifically the gothic Victorian style items, are apparently called let's see, what's it called? Carpenter Gothic. There we go. Carpenter Gothic is a style of Victorian architecture that can only be found in the United States. It's basically, in the words of Harrie herself, it is Gothic revival but in wood. And that's why it can only be found in the United States, because in other parts of the world, in particular the UK, Gothic revival is mainly built out of stone material. I think that's the case in this build, so I do imagine this build to be located somewhere in the British Isles. Even though we're building it right now in Strangerville, I do feel like this build looks a little bit more British, or like at least European, right? Anyway, other than the Gothic revival style, I feel like it's more appropriate to actually label this build as eclectic, because as you guys can see, the exterior really exhibits a combination of many different architectural styles, not just Gothic revival, but there's also elements of medieval architecture, like medieval castle architecture, because as you guys can see, I just built those turret, what are those called? Crenellation details on the roofs. I could also see like some Queen Anne, I guess, which is kind of like the stereotypical Victorian style, because there is this corner balcony. No, it's not. It's a corner tower, which is kind of like a trademark feature of Queen Anne architecture. But if you guys look closely later on, the corner tower actually has a mansard roof, which I would say makes it look more French. So I would also consider this build partly Second Empire as well. Oh, we're already working on the roof of this corner tower, and there's also some wraparound balconies and some beautiful delicate woodwork detail on the outside as well, which definitely gives it that Victorian look. So I was sharing this build on Twitter, and somebody kindly pointed out that it was very reminiscent of the house from Coraline, and I kind of agree. I will say that that was not my intention. As you guys can see, this whole build process, I kind of was just going with the flow, doing, you know, whatever I wanted to do, and for some reason it ended up like the house from Coraline. I think once I changed the color scheme of the outside and add some of the balconies on the side where there has like this staircase thing, I think that's where it becomes to resemble the house from Coraline. Initially I was gonna go for this dark wood detail on the outside, but I didn't really like how it worked with the red brick that I chose, because really it didn't work at all. So instead I changed all of the architectural details to white as instead of wood. So yeah, I'm really happy with the finished color scheme. I feel like it looks very Victorian. I do imagine this to be more of like a late Victorian. You know, I really want to consider this build like a Belle Epoque era type build, if that makes any sense, because Belle Epoque is kind of like a time period during the late Victorian period, maybe like late Victorian / early Edwardian, and I definitely feel that in this build. Don't you guys agree? So yeah, it's such a beautiful build. Like, it's like literally, I really am not trying to toot my own horn here, but it's such a gorgeous, beautiful build, if I do say so myself. I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy that I took the time to you know, work on this and really put in the work and all the intricate details in this build, because I feel like at the end of the day it was really worth it. So I actually decided to move this build into a different lot here in Strangerville, and I think once I did that, I realized that the side facade was actually nicer than the front, because as you guys can see, there's like some symmetry going on with the balconies on the side, and then there's also that you know, corner tower, and then the staircase thing that leads up to the corner tower. I think it just makes for a very beautiful view. So I think there's really no facade. I feel like the corner of this build is the prettiest one, so that's what I will highlight in the house tour video. Actually, I filmed everything I needed for this build except for this commentary, because I was kind of waiting for all of the noise outside to die down. Unfortunately, there is a concert happening in the university outside of my apartment, and I'm just like, literally, this is not the best timing for this. But you know what, I'm gonna try my best to make sure that the audio is as clear as I can possibly make it. So hopefully you guys will bear with me. And yeah, I'm still putting in a lot of details over here. I'm really happy with all of those like wrought iron details I put on the windows, and also on the roofs as well. I think that really added like an element of flamboyant gothic, which is kind of like a late gothic style. It's been a while since I reviewed my architectural history, but if I remember correctly, there's 3 time periods of Gothic architecture. I think the first one is early Gothic, the second one is High Gothic, and the third one is Flamboyant Gothic. And there's this thing called a flamboyant arch, and that's what I was trying to achieve with this showpiece window in the front facade. And I'm really happy with it. I used the window and some details from Strangerville as well. Right, so now we're working on the interior, and basically a lot of my main inspiration actually came from country houses from the UK. I looked at like country houses from Scotland and all of that, so I felt like it really worked. Since we had a lot of Gothic details on the outside, I wanted to have some sort of like medieval inspired interior as well. So here I am just taking my time with the ceiling. I've done this technique in my castle build I did last year, and I'm really happy with it. I think the ceiling detail using the spandrel really works well with high ceilings, because that's something that I always struggle with, is how to make rooms with high ceilings actually work in a beautiful aesthetic way, because if in The Sims we really don't have ceilings so it's kind of like awful to see just plain white ceilings. They just ruin the whole effect, and I think that doing the spandrel thing kind of helps a little bit. Not sure if you guys can see it here in this build, but this room, believe it or not, was actually inspired by the library in Downton Abbey. Obviously it's not the same, but there are some elements that I've referenced from it. In particular, this composition of the sofas and the leather chairs. I also put like this giant flower arrangement on the table in between the leather chairs as well, and that is kind of like a reference from a little sequence in Downton Abbey featuring the amazing Maggie Smith, who was criticizing her daughter-in-law for her apparently awful flower arrangements. That cracked me up. Literally, Maggie Smith has like the best one-liners in Downton Abbey. Like, I miss that show so much, even though I have read somewhere that they're gonna make like a movie on it, so that's really exciting. But yeah, I think that's the only room I do this giant flower arrangement, but I think it works, believe it or not. So basically this room that we're furnishing right now, it kind of works as the main salon, I guess that's the most appropriate name to call this place, because it's kind of like a library slash living room slash music room slash study as well. It's kind of like a more formal you know, like drawing room, I guess, if that makes sense. There is another informal living room as well in a different location in this house, but I have to say I really enjoyed doing this furnishing here, because I did this technique with these paintings. I don't really do these a lot in builds because they just take a lot of time, but I used different paintings. I preferably classical looking style paintings from the buy mode catalog, and I kind of just put them together to make them look like, you know, those clusters of paintings that you would see in old you know, in old like manor houses, you know. So yeah, I do this technique in many rooms in the house, but I think this is the only time I'm gonna show them, because it kind of gets redundant at some point. But oh my gosh, look at how much time it's actually taking me. Not sure if it's coming through, but the footage of this particular sequence of me arranging the paintings is actually sped up slightly more than the rest of the build, simply because I'm not really doing much. I'm just kind of like arranging them in a nice way, and yeah. So I'm really happy with this room. It feels really formal yet intimate as well. And here I am actually changing the upholstery on the sofas and on the chairs into pink, and I didn't expect it to work so well, but it did, and I'm really happy about it. So yeah. Moving on to the next room that we're going to be furnishing is the dining room, and this is where I got very indecisive. I knew that I wanted a grand dining room, and I had this idea of combining tables from Jungle Adventure to make this beautiful, magnificent dining table here. This is fully functional, and as you guys can see, it is I believe it's a 12-seater table, and it's beautiful. It's an interesting kind of like oval shape, which I'm really happy about, and I feel like it gives grandeur to this, you know, country house. And what's really interesting about this build as well is that I got to revisit many of the techniques I used to do when I used to build a lot of palaces and great houses before. Like a couple years ago, the only things I would build in The Sims 4 were palaces and, you know, recreations of manor houses in real life. I would recreate them in The Sims 4. In fact, I think my first few builds were palaces. Like my very first build for The Sims 4 was the Petit Trianon, and I think the second one was Downton Abbey. Really funny story. When I first did builds on The Sims 4, I never did speed builds because I was still getting used to the controls. So instead of like fast forwarding my building process, I would build in real time because that would familiarize me with the whole controls of The Sims 4. Eventually I got used to it and started doing speed builds, but that's a really funny little story that I wanted to share. Excuse me. But yeah, I was really happy with this room. I got so indecisive because I just could not choose wallpaper that worked for me, so I changed multiple times, but I think off camera I settled for a brown wallpaper that has like a very slight floral pattern. This is also the point where I actually flipped this whole room like in reverse basically, because I wanted to have a door from the kitchen leading up to the dining room, and obviously I couldn't do that because we had some of these cabinetries covering the wall where the door is supposed to be, so I just moved everything to make room for it. And yeah, I'm really happy with this. Let's see here. Nothing too crazy. It's a dining room. To be honest, I feel like nobody is gonna use this. It's just here for show, but I think, you know, it's very beautiful and grand. Oh my gosh, here I am changing into one of the 10 million wallpapers that I actually choose here. This isn't the final wallpaper, by the way, just a little bit of a disclaimer. I will change that eventually into something else. So yeah. And let's see here. Oh, you know what? We might as well talk about the family that lives here because I really want to, I guess, bring more life into the build. So basically the family that lives here, they're kind of like a young family, I guess, because they have 2 kids, and I'm gonna say they're expecting because I wasn't able to cheat my way to having my sim give birth. I looked it up online, and apparently there are cheats to make your sim automatically give birth, but apparently those cheats are broken, so hopefully those get fixed, because I would really love to have had like a sequence in the house tour where there is you know, a baby. So yeah, anyway, I'm gonna talk about that later when we're actually doing the nursery, but right now we're furnishing the kitchen. And for the kitchen, once again, I went for a very traditional style. I used counters from, I believe these are from Parenthood. Beautiful counters, and I mixed them with counters from Vampires, or like counter cabinets from Vampires, and they're kind of like mismatched, and they're kind of like really pretty. I didn't expect them to look this good. Actually, a contrast to the rest of the house, this particular room is actually very light and sunny and like really fresh. It's like, you know, it has this like egg like scrambled egg color, if that makes sense. So I feel like that makes this really fresh. I literally like cut so much footage, like literally, but in the kitchen there's really nothing much to see. I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of the process of me building it so that you guys can have a little bit of an idea on what the layout of it would be. But in the kitchen there is a table. It's supposed to be like a breakfast table in the middle, and I put like one of those baby like chairs. What are those called? Like a high chair for toddlers. So I was really happy about that little detail that I remembered. Anyway, this room right here is the informal living room. I would say this is like the parlor, maybe. I'm not sure if that's really the right technical term for this, but this is like the family room, I guess. This is where they would hang out, you know, sit by the fire, watch some TV, play some video games, and play some, you know, arcade games as well. As you guys can see, this build is not a historical build. It's an old building, but it has contemporary, you know, amenities such as electricity and television and all of that stuff. Oh my gosh, I love this little detail of this gramophone right here. I don't really use this item that often, but yeah, it's actually a gramophone, so I made my own little gramophone there. I did test out that room. You can actually use most of the items except for the foosball table, because there's this one chair that's blocking it, so you guys have to delete that chair if you want to make the foosball table functional, but you know, it's not that big of a deal. Here I am furnishing the upstairs hallway, and I knew that I wanted to use that chandelier that came with Get Famous. I believe it's like a medieval prop for like medieval sets, but it's so beautiful and magnificent. And there's not a lot of furniture in this room in particular. There's just that big painting that came with vampires, and I think some cabinets and some chairs, but that's all. All right, we are now moving into the master bedroom, and once again, we're not gonna linger too much on each room because so much time spent was actually just me putting clutter everywhere, and that was just crazy. And it took me a crazy amount of time as well. But this is the master bedroom. It's very big. It's actually a suite of 3 rooms. So there is the bedroom itself, there is the dressing room, and there is the master bathroom as well. So the centerpiece of this room is this beautiful bed from Vampires. I really wish that we would get more canopy beds in the future, because as much as I like that one from Vampires, I just really want more canopy beds. Excuse me if I keep coughing by the way. But anyway, I also put like this dresser and you know, just some fun little skill items as well. Actually, I imagine one of the parents to be really into painting, so there is an easel in this bedroom. I'm not sure how practical having an easel would be in this carpet, but I did put like a tarp underneath the easel to protect the carpet. And there's also another easel on the balcony outside the bedroom as well, so whoever lives here is really into painting. Alright, moving on to the master bedroom. It's the master bathroom, excuse me. And this is the only bathroom that I'm going to be furnishing in this house. It's the nicest one, I will say. This one has a lot of tropical plants because I wanted to have that fresh, tranquil look for the interior. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. I love these tropical plants, by the way. They feel very Victorian. So yeah, oh my gosh, literally we barely spent any time on the master bathroom and we're already moving into the kids' bedroom. So once again, I got so indecisive. This room originally had a blue color scheme, but I was kind of getting tired of that, so I went for this yellow and green color scheme as well instead. And there's also a lot of fun stuff in this room as well. There is this theater set for the kids. I believe that one came with kids room stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully I can catch where it came from actually. Oh, it's that one. Let's see. But yeah, it's the theater thing. That's actually fully functional. I did fiddle around with the layout of this room a little bit to make everything actually functional, but I did manage to make everything fully functional in the end. Really happy with it. It's not that big of a room considering there's 2 kids sleeping here, but that was the kids' bedroom. And now we're moving on to the nursery, which I had so much fun furnishing this place. I'm using this technique for this, I guess like diaper changing, what's this thing called? Yeah, you guys get what this is supposed to be. I got this technique from a good friend, Hey Harry, and literally I feel like a lot of the bays do that, because I feel like I've seen like Simlissy do that as well, and maybe Pineapple as well. I'm not sure. So many people I'm referencing today, but we all learn from each other. And I think that's what's so great about this community. But in this room, I also imagine it to kind of be an extension to the kids' bedroom, because this is more of like a playroom. So yeah, there's a giant oversized dollhouse, and of course some stuff for the toddler. There's a high chair and like a potty training thing, and some stuffed animals as well. Right, so here we are furnishing this unexpected room, I will say, because I wasn't planning on making this like a thing, but this area underneath the staircase actually becomes kind of like a retro themed drinking lounge or something like that. So basically I used this retro looking jukebox. Is that a jukebox? I'm not sure if that's considered a jukebox, but it's the one to the right. I'm not sure if that's a jukebox actually. I'm not sure if that's the right term for that, but yeah, this is kind of like a lounge. It's kind of like a smoking, no, it's not smoke, maybe drinking. Yeah. So yeah, we have some vintage themed items here, like vintage themed posters, and I love that detail on the wall where there's like these mirrors and there's hanging drinks, hanging nectar, and then underneath it is like this beautiful piece that came with Strangerville. It's like this retro looking piece of metal that has like graffiti on it. It's very beautiful. And the final room that we're going to be furnishing for the interior is this. I will call this room the cabinet of curiosities. I feel like many old houses have this, but basically this is where they would keep a lot of the artifacts. As you guys can see, there is what's that thing? An archaeology table and just random artifacts from all over the world. And it took me forever to furnish this place as well. There's even a skeleton. There's like, you know, these like weapons and all of that stuff. But yeah, this is a great place for the Sims to kind of just relax, maybe read like an archaeology book and build up some skills. Right, I think at this point we're pretty much done with the interior. So right now we're moving on to the landscaping, which is actually one of my favorite aspects of this build. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a sip of water here really quickly. Literally professionalism here. Anyway, this little gazebo thing, it was actually inspired by the Temple of Love of Marie Antoinette in Versailles in her garden at the Trianon. And basically for the garden, I built it along the lines of classical gardens. So it's very geometric. Everything is very manicured. Oh my gosh, I love this detail. I'm so happy I thought about it. So we had this like piece of land like in between some pathways, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna put here? So instead of putting like just random plants, I decided to make this into a parterre. Now parterres are like this formal garden feature, and they're basically these decorative flower arrangements that are meant to be viewed from above, which is a great place to have it because as you guys can see, there's a bunch of balconies that are overlooking this place, and it literally took me ages to make sure that this thing looked right, because the symmetry just needed to be a thing. It just needed to be symmetrical, basically. So yeah, I spent a lot of time working on that. And of course, the lawn is mowed as well, and very well manicured. The rest of the garden is actually more naturalistic. It's planted with some beautiful pink flowers, and yeah, they're really nice. Some lavenders as well, and what else? Some white flowers as well. I think I changed some of those pink flowers into red just to give a little bit of variety, but this is what the rest of the garden is going to look like. I just wanted to show that to you guys so you can have a little bit of an idea on what it's going to look. I put this beautiful dogwood tree. I think it really makes the garden. Underneath it there is a bench and also like a bird watching thing, and then here I am just lining this circular planter beds with those hedges. I feel like those little things really make a difference, and I say little, but it actually takes a lot of time to do those. And here I'm putting like a flower station. Everything's happening so fast. Oh my gosh, can I keep up though? But yeah, I had so much fun working here, and this is actually the last section of this build that we're going to be doing. At first I deleted this hedge fence that was supposed to surround this place, but I just put it back because I did not like that wooden fence. It just looked really weird. And I'm putting in swing and also like some planter boxes as well, but I feel like that's actually gonna be it for this build. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to help support the channel by sharing and liking the video, because that really helps out a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up my commentary right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. You all have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.